Made this video while I was replacing exhaust manifold on a 2008 Outback. I noticed that the control arm bushings were worn, so I did those and the ball joints, and this shows that. As in all my videos, I'm doing this. I'm making these based on kind of what I would want to see in a video, which is just pictures of the stages of the procedure rather than the actual work. Okay, on the '08 Outback, as I work on the exhaust, I happen to notice that the rubber bushings on the rear end of the control arms were failing. These are in pretty poor shape, so sadly that means replacing those as well. So I'm going to make this kind of a little separate video. A-arms are held on in a couple places by the lower ball joint. The sway bar is attached to it. There's a bolt here, and then there's a main bolt here, and these two bolts that hold this bracket on. Subaru have a sort of funky way of dealing with ball joints, which is this pinch. The bottom of the hub has a pinch, and the ball joint has a shoulder that you fit in there. This A-arm is already off, and this one is getting ready to go. The main trick of getting these ball joints loose is the BFH. On Subarus, what I tend to do is provide a little bit of support for the wheel hub assembly, just so this has got some tension, I guess, forcing things up, and then hit it right here. And don't be afraid to hit it right here, I should say. Don't be afraid to give it some beans when you do that, and it will break loose eventually. The after you get the A-arms off, you have to get them out of the arms. So I have this one removed. It's an interference fit there. That's in there nice and tight. The way I ended up dealing with this was to use my Harbor Freight press, and I had to basically manufacture a press bushing that would fit through the hole so you could drive things out. Has to be, you know, pretty much the same size so that you can knock the thing out or you can press it out. I made this out of a worn timing belt bearing, one of the bearings from there, and essentially cut it off. And getting the sizing is pretty tricky, I have to say. It needs to be about 60 millimeters. I was not able to find a socket that fit to be able to press things out. Like I said, this is about 60 millimeters, 2.4 inches. 2.5 would be too thick. So anyway, I just sliced one of these apart. I tried first with kind of the idle bearing. I mean, these are all from a previous timing job. This is slightly too big. But anyway, and I was experimenting with a bearing race here too. Just have to develop your own system for doing that. and then press them out on some kind of press. I've seen video of people using C-clamps to do this kind of stuff, but I don't know if I would recommend it. Just quickly, ball joint separated, A-arm separated. Last to do is these 3 bolts back here, and the passenger side A-arm will be off. As I'm pressing this out, just a note that there isn't a specific orientation apparently, which is to, it looks like this line here kind of needs to line up with the one hole there. It doesn't exactly, but that's what I've read elsewhere, so just a note there. This is the replacement part number for the 2008 Subaru ball joint. Getting these out is kind of fun. They're fairly solidly in there. I think this is kind of a design flaw. You know, this is a very exposed area. Here in the Pacific Northwest, there's not a lot of salt or corrosion, but after 200,000 miles, these ball joints and the bottom of the hub mechanism here, pretty rusty. I've already cleaned out quite a lot of the rust. The way to remove them is to, here, while it's in situ, actually, it's quite a lot that shows this, but essentially you break the ball joint first from the A-arm and then hammer out or press out the ball joint from this interference fit here. Even on this car, which like I said is not particularly rusty, you can see quite a fair amount of corrosion in there. I've already wire brushed it out and I'll sand it a bit more. But as I understand, Subaru kind of have now got rid of this design, but probably none too soon. In fact, it's kind of hard to get ball joints from the dealership because they sell the entire control arm assembly. Which still means you have to hammer it out of here. To briefly show what I did, you might want to, if you're not doing the bushings like I am, probably don't want to take the A-arms off. But like I said, you break the ball joint with your pickle fork or whatever. Hitting with a hammer is what I did, like the previous vid. And then once it's broken, with your nut on there, you clobber the top of this A-arm, repeatedly spraying penetrating oil, Croil or whatever, around this pinch until it comes out. After a while, it will come out. So we're ready to redo the control arms and ball joints on this 08 Subaru. Not anticipating too many issues, but gonna replace these before I put the exhaust on, so we get a little bit more of a view. I used the 20-ton Harbor Freight press to press the bushings back in. I made this out of a timing belt wheel. Getting them back in, that's a little tricky. Getting things lined up reasonably well it took a few times, but they'll go in there. I'm actually noticing on this one that It's a little bit out of line there. I don't think it's enough for me to go ahead and redo it, but it really should. This should be on a line with the ball joint. Just a quick note here, I decided to press the bushing out and press it back in so it did line up. That is according to spec, so I want to make sure that we get it right here. Pressing the bushings in and out of here it's a little bit tricky, but just take it slow and they'll come in and out. So now that the bushings are pressed in, I'm just putting the ball joints back in. If you slightly spread the, well, backing up here, I cleaned out, there's quite a bit of rust in here. Let me line up the camera a bit better. Quite a bit of rust in there. Used wire brush and actually a little bit of coarse grade sandpaper to tidy that up a bit. Ball joint fits in there pretty nicely with the, if you chisel out the extension a bit there and then taking it out, it will kind of lock it in. Also put some anti-seize liberally around that, obviously avoiding the taper itself, and a liberal amount of anti-seize on the bolt, which I have used a wire brush to clean up. Again, it was 200,000 miles. Even here, there was a little bit of rust there. Okay, a couple things. One is, these guys are super stiff, brand new. Although I didn't detect any movement, the ones off the car are considerably loose. I mean, it makes sense. A lot of time in the saddle there. This pinch bolt, the torque to this is 37 foot-pounds, and that is enough to make that, to pinch this pretty well and hold it in there solidly. So this is the A arms all on, control arms. Lining up the sway bar can be a little bit tricky. In my case, I had to just slightly loosen off this so I could slide it back and forth and get these little swing arms kind of to fit in. The first bolt you need to torque up is this one. Spec is 65 foot-pounds. And these two need to be tightened up later to 110 foot-pounds. This bolt here at the front of the A-arm needs to be tightened with the suspension loaded. Manual says on the ground, so just something to be aware of there. I mean, obviously all these other ones doesn't matter about loading, but you do want to have these two bolts torqued down under load. Unlike just quick overview, both A arms are on. Don't forget your sway bar, although I'm not sure. In my case, I had to loosen off the rubber mounts there so I could slide it back and forth enough to get this all into play. You might be able to kind of maneuver the A-arm or control arm in, but you're having to manage a whole bunch of different points to get at it, so it might be just easier to do the sway bar afterwards. These two bolts here and here, tighten the bushing down, 65 foot-pounds. Those you do first, followed by these two, which I think are 110 foot-pounds, and then the bolt that holds the control. This bolt here needs to be tightened down to the subframe to 70 foot-pounds, but with the suspension loaded. Manual says with the wheels on the ground. So Okay, a couple things. One is these guys are super stiff, brand new. Although I didn't detect any movement, the ones off the car are considerably loose. I mean, it makes sense. A lot of time in the saddle there. This pinch bolt, the torque to this is 37 foot-pounds, and that is enough to make that, to pinch this pretty well and hold it in there solidly. Okay, this is my solution to doing the bottom of the control arms. I just dropped the car down on a lift. I think technically it's supposed to be flat, but I wanted to have some space under there, so that's what I did.